Were we also asking the participants to provide their answers to the polls in the chat feature?
Yes.
I think so, Tom.
Good morning, everyone. You have joined the Walker Mill Regional Park Master Development Plan. We will be beginning shortly. Ayana, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, all. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Walker Mill Regional Park Master Development Plan community meeting. Thank you for joining us. My name is Ayana Moore, and I'm the Public Information Coordinator in the Park Planning and Development Division for the Department of Parks and Recreation, Prince George's County. With me this morning, I have a number of people from the Parks and Recreation Department, Councilmember Derek Davis's office, and LSG and Greenplay, the consulting firms partnering with us on the development plan. First, there will be a presentation followed by a question and answer segment. You can drop your questions in the chat throughout the presentation, and at the end, we will have the panel respond. This meeting is being recorded and the video will be available to you sometime next week. Before we begin the presentation, I want to welcome and introduce Bill Tyler, Director for the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission, Department of Parks and Recreation in Prince George's County. Director Tyler took the helm of the only 6-time National Gold Medal Award winner for excellence in Parks and Recreation management in the nation in February of 2020, just before the COVID-19 pandemic struck. Since then, he has taken initiative, prioritized public health and safety, and found innovative solutions for the department to support the county and its residents during this incredibly difficult crisis. He has focused on accountability, transparency, and streamlining processes, allowing staff to focus on delivering online programming, virtual resources, limited in-person recreation and fitness, and grab-and-go meals and educational opportunities for our youth and seniors. With more than 35 years of extensive work experience and 30 years in leisure service, fitness, and recreation management, Bill has been the Director of Health Promotion Services for the YWCA and Executive Director of Bowie YMCA of the metropolitan area, as well as Regional Supervisor and Division Chief for Montgomery County Department of Recreation, and our sister agency, Division Chief of the Montgomery County Parks Department and Bureau Chief Assistant Director of the City of Baltimore. With that, I pass the virtual stage to our fearless leader, Bill Tyler.
Good. Thank you, Ayana. That's most wonderful presentation there. I was wondering who you were talking about, but anyway, good morning to all and thank you for joining us. I am Bill Tyler, Director of the MNC Department of Parks and Recreation. Speaking of our programming, I'd like to start right out by saying I hope that you will join us tomorrow at 2 o'clock for our Black History Month programming, beginning with the poster unveiling on social media and the website at 2 p.m. Now for today, such an exciting day. Our Park and Planning Development team, which is an outstanding team, by the way, will update you on the Master Development Plan for the northern portion of Walker Mill Regional Park. The master plan establishes a vision for the park for decades to come, providing a comprehensive guideline and creating a framework to determine the major incremental actions needed to achieve that vision. However, the most important part of the planning process is gathering input from you, the community. So please provide your feedback to help inform this significant endeavor. And I know that no one on this call needs to have an introduction, but we are so fortunate that Councilmember Derek Davis was able to join us for the update this morning. So as you well know, he is a fervent champion of District 6 and recognizes the importance of this park development process for not only his constituents, but for the county as a whole. So I welcome Councilmember Derek Davis. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Good morning, everyone. Thanks, Ayana, for kicking us off today. I'm excited. You know, this is near and dear to my heart. Many who've known me for many years know clearly that I grew up in Capitol Heights, and Walker Mill Regional Park was one of the places that I frequented as a youngster, especially when I still thought that I could play basketball. But first, let me say thanks to the Department of Recreation, Parks and Recreations for moving forward with this process. Walker Mill Regional Park is at the very heart of our community, and I mean that demographically and geographically. You know, District 6 is the heart of Prince George's County. We sit right in the middle, and our constituency represents all that the Prince George's County has to offer. So I'm very grateful that Park and Planning and the Development Division for leading this effort and funding the project to protect, preserve, and expand this extremely special place. I urge all of you who have joined us for the meeting this morning to show a continued interest in this planning process by viewing the regularly updated project page at pgparks.com/WMRP Master Plan. Again, pgparks.com/WMRP Master Plan, and make your voices heard by filling out the surveys and attending the virtual feedback meetings such as these. Together, we will create a master development that reflects the collective vision of our community. So please share this information with your neighbors and get them involved in the process and have them join these virtual meetings. Before we got started, I was bragging about one of the things that we've learned with this COVID-19 is that more people have been participants in these types of events. We applaud that reality and hope that as we move forward, when we get through vaccination and we get to the new normal that we have gleaned from this opportunity, this crisis opportunity, some of the good things, and that we share things like this, the virtual meeting, and we have greater participation. So just as a personal aside, you know, I said this park means a lot to me, but I just want you to think about it from the perspective of the open space that's created inside the Washington Beltway and what we have in Prince George's County, Capitol Heights, Maryland, the great opportunity that it is. You know, when I was reflecting and jokingly playing out the fact that I used to go to Walker Mill Regional in the summers after when I was in college and late in high school to play pickup basketball, it just made me really think about the skill level and the talent level that comes out of Prince George's County. And I know you guys have been watching lately the view on social media as well as on cable TV about it being in the water. Well, you know, those guys that they talk about, Kevin Durant, Markelle Fultz, Beasley, Quinn Cook, Victor Oladipo. And if you go back the days that I grew up, I'm over 50, you know, Lenny Bias was a great hardwood legend to be, but before he was a hardwood legend, he was a hard court legend. You know, they stomped the playgrounds, they stomped the Walker Mill Regional Parks, the parks and the schoolyards where basketball could be played. Gerard Mustaf, Brent Milstead, the Tucker Boys, X-Ray Hip, and the Wizard, Walter Williams. We had great folks in this area who gathered at our park and recreation facilities that have gone on to greatness. So as we think about the realities of the Walker Mill Regional Park and its connection to our history, all the way back to Juneteenth, all the way through the Negro Leagues, let's make sure that we capture and we carry forward a great tradition here in Prince George's County at the heart. And with that, let me pass the torch over to my good friend and Walker Mill Regional Park Master Development Plan guru and guide, Mr. Joseph JJ RC. JJ, you got it, my friend.
Hey, Thank you. Thank you, Councilman Davis, for the energy and starting us off this morning. We're really excited to be here with you guys, although this is not in person. The energy and the needed input is still very important to this process. I also want to thank Ayanna and Bill for the introductions. So I am Joseph Arce, or JJ, with the Department of Parks and Recreation, Park Planning and Development Division. I'm the Central Area Park Planner for the county and the project manager for this master plan. And again, I want to thank you for taking the time to participate this morning. The team is excited to start interacting and involving you and your communities within this planning process. But before we get started, I would like to introduce more of the team and other presenters for today. Next slide, please. So besides myself is Claire Warstel, the lead strategic park planner for the county, but she is also the co-project manager for this project, but is working behind the scenes this morning along with Ayanna and the other team that's with us. We also have our consultants, Mark Gionnet, Amol Deshpande, Kirsten Nichols, Stacy Loggins with LSG Landscape Architecture, and Tom Deal is a sub-consultant under LSG with Greenplay LLC. Next slide, please. So this is our agenda for today. We will be starting with reviewing the project schedule and milestones for the project. Then we will move into presenting some of our major findings and how those are guiding the planning process, along with the input we have collected from other community engagement opportunities like the online survey. That can be found at the pgparks.com /WMRP master plan project website. Then we will show you how we are starting to visualize the park and ask for your input throughout the presentation. We incorporated polling questions and breaks where you will have some time to digest the information and give us your reactions and input to what we've done so far. For those of you who are calling on the phone, we will have this presentation and the polls on the project website after the meeting. Again, the project website is pgparks.com /WMRP master plan. And the link will be posted in the chat if you want to access the website during this meeting. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is one more. So this is the project timeline and schedule. The project started in November 2019, so that's when LSG came aboard and their sub-consultants. The planning process is typically 1.5 years from beginning to end, where we will get a final master plan product, which will guide the CIP and other decisions around developing the park. Unfortunately, and as you all know, COVID has delayed this and many other projects, but it also gave us the opportunity to regroup and strategize on how to best reach you and the other users of the park virtually. So the project started with a site and context analysis to help determine the limitations, but also the opportunities for development. This will really guide what we can and cannot do and make sure that we're following the restrictions, but making sure that we have your input and your recommendations in this plan as well. And as you can see, we are in the January 2021 community engagement piece, which will run through the rest of the process. We will come back to you guys 2 other times. Next slide, please. To discuss our vision and your vision and how we are incorporating those pieces into the project. Next slide, please. So this, as an introduction to a master plan, this is really guided by our Formula 2040, which is a functional master plan for the department. It revolves around connectivity, health and wellness, and economic development, but also the types of programs, parkland, where we're missing activities and amenities for the residents of the county, and really gives us an outline of how to proceed to 2040. So a lot of these pieces will be drawing from 2040. A lot of the pieces within the master plan will be drawn from 2040, but also combined with internal goals and the goals of the community. Next slide, please. So we are at our poll question 1. So how we're doing this is we have a question, but also answers corresponding to each option. So in the chat, if you could, please write and send in the number that is corresponding to the option. So poll question 1, how did you hear about this meeting? 1A is a flyer, 1B project website, 1C through email, 1D county council newsletters, and 1E other. For 1E, you could also type in your answer. So I will give about 30 seconds to a minute for everyone to start polling. And for those who are on the phone, again, we will have these poll questions and presentation on the project website. So you can always email us or do it online after the meeting. And so I see there are a few answers. Some people saw the meeting through the county council newsletters, through personal emails. I'll give everyone about 15 more seconds. And if you have any issues with responding to this poll, please write it into the chat box as well. Okay, next slide. Okay, so now we're going to get into the major findings of the process so far. Next slide. One of the first things we did was to really define the context of the park, where it is geographically within the county and how that interacts with the other parks that are provided for the residents. So there are 4 regional parks within the county, one being Walker Mill, another being Watkins, which is just down Central Avenue, but outside the Beltway. Walker Mill is very important because it is the only regional park within the Beltway. This is a precious resource for this region and for the county, and it provides some of the best amenities for the residents in this area. We also have Fairland Regional Park in the north and Costco Regional Park in the south. We completed a master plan for Watkins in 2018, late 2018, early 2019, which can be seen on the project website or on pgparks.com as well. And so this process, it will kind of mimic that process for Watkins. We will end up with an implementation strategy, which again will guide the CIP process and funding for developing the park. Another team within the Park Planning and Development Division is also working on Costco Regional Park. And then further on down the line, we will start working on Fairland Regional Park as well. Next slide. And then we go deeper into the more immediate context of Walker Mill, really defining what connections are currently there, how to improve them, and the historic and cultural significance of this area. Again, this park is just south of Central Avenue, and Central Avenue is a main corridor for Prince George's County. It has a lot of significance historically, but also with the Ridgely family, which we'll get into later. But it also has connections to the Redskins Stadium, or the Redskins Stadium, Prince George's Community College, J. Franklin Memorial Swimming Pool, Millwood Recreation Center, Largo Town Center Metro, and Largo Plaza. This park is 500 acres, bisected by Walker Mill Road. Each side of the park is about the same, so 250 acres on each side. Next slide, please. And then we went even deeper to look at what's currently there. This park is developed. It has multiple athletic fields, the skate park, court sports, including tennis and basketball, and the Imagination Playground. We understand that these are very integral pieces of the community, but we also understand there are opportunities to expand this and to provide more for the residents and make sure it's a holistic park on both from the south into the north. Next slide, please. And so I'll pass it on now to Tom Deal with GreenPlay. He will get into the demographics and some of the information we have collected already from the community.
Thank you, JJ. My name is Tom Deal. I am a principal and a project manager with GreenPlay, working with LSG on this project. We worked with the project team to determine the sphere of influence of Walker Mill Park. The sphere of influence was determined to be a 30-minute drive, the distance that residents would be willing to drive to and from Walker Mill Regional Park. Next slide. We did a demographic and trends analysis as part of our work. This slide shows the key demographic takeaways. You can see that the community and the population is fast growing. 33% of the population is school-aged, under 20. 90% of subregion 4 are African American. Subregion 4 is largely built out, offering few opportunities for new green space development. So that makes this project so important. Next slide, please. This is our second poll question, and we'd like to ask you to help us identify who is on our call today. The first part is, what is your zip code? So if you would text or chat your zip code, that would be appreciated. Or if you're using email, if you could email us your zip code. And the second part of the poll question, we're looking for you to tell us a little bit about yourself and how often you might be using the facility. So the answers, and you can choose all that apply. Answer 2A is, I frequently visit or use facilities at Walker Mill Regional Park. 2B, I occasionally visit or use facilities at Walker Mill Regional Park. And 2C is, I do not currently visit or use Walker Mill Regional Park. We'll give you about 30 seconds to a minute to answer that. I see some zip codes are coming in. We're starting to get some answers to the second question. Still getting answers, that's great. We'll continue taking those answers, and Kirsten, if we can move to the next slide. We wanted to talk to you a little bit about community engagement. So far during this process, we've held 3 focus groups with 45 or more participants. We had stakeholder interviews with more than 30 Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission staff members. And we had more than 75 respondents have completed the survey, which is still open, and the link will be shared at the end of the presentation. Some of the priorities that were identified during the initial public engagement were the importance of agricultural and garden uses, to address access and conserving natural resources, to improve athletic uses, to expand cultural history, to consider multi-generational facilities and programming, and to make sure that we're focusing on ease of access to the community and to the neighboring communities. Next slide, please. We've gotten some of the preliminary information back regarding the survey. What we're showing you here are the most used facilities, activities, and programs at Walker Mill Regional Park. Those are the children's playground and trails for walking, jogging, and biking. We also, down below, you'll see some notes that we've added. Watkins Regional Park is the most visited park from the survey. 68% of respondents did not even know about the northern half of the park, and 72% of the respondents did not know there are historic structures on the northern half of the park. So we'll take that into consideration as recommendations are being made. Next slide, please. This slide is showing the survey results for park visitation frequency. 54.7% of the people that have responded to the survey occasionally use Walker Mill Regional Park a few times a year, and 28% use Walker Mill Regional Park on a monthly basis. We also asked the length of time visitors have been coming to the park. 36% had indicated that they just started coming within the last year, and 26.7% had indicated that they've been coming for 5 to 9 years. We also asked what were some of the most important or most liked amenities on the southern half of Walker Mill Regional Park. Some of the highlights were the playground, the variety of amenities. You can go back one slide. The location and access, ease of parking, the athletic courts and fields, the trails, the water and spray features, the skate park, and the picnic areas are some of the top amenities on the southern side. Next slide, please. Thank you. We also asked what were some of the other closest neighborhood parks that the survey respondents frequented. The top responses were Fairwood and Westphalia. We also asked to tell what the age range of the people in the survey household that were visiting the parks were. And as you can see, there's a nice variety of age groups visiting the parks. The largest groups were 66 years and older, 31 to 55 years, or 5 to 9 years old. We also asked during this time some recommended improvements. You can see there's quite a list, and this will be posted afterwards. I'll just highlight a few. Amenities for young children, more modern features, picnic shelters, more bathrooms, programs for seniors, community day events, more picnic shelters, agricultural education, historical education, a performance stage. So you can see there's quite a nice list. Next slide, please. All right, now we're at our third poll, and we'd like you to tell us a little bit about the people in your household. So if you could, and again, you can choose all that apply. 3A, indicate if you have people in your household that are between 0 and 9 years old. 3B, between 10 and 15 years old. 3C, 16 to 20 years old. 3D, 21 to 30 years old. 3E, 31 to 55 years old. 3F, 56 to 65 years old. And 3G, 66 years or older. So again, if you would indicate about your household, what are the different age groups that you have in your household and just either put those into the chat or send that via email. We seem to be getting some answers in, so we'll give you 30 seconds or so. All right, I would like to turn the presentation over to Stacy, who will take you from here.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Stacy Loggins from LSG Landscape Architecture, and I'm here to talk about some analyses that we completed for Walker Mill Regional Park. Before we can make any recommendations for development, we have to completely understand the site and what opportunities it has might present, and also what challenges might arise as well. So the map, if you're able to see this, the map you're looking at right now is a historical analysis map. First, I'd like to highlight one, there's a couple of important features we'd like to talk about, but the first to highlight is the Concord Manor House and its surrounding outbuildings. And the historical significance of this cannot be overstated. Manor House is number 1 on your map if you're able to see it. And it was constructed prior to 1800s. It's a really good example of federal architecture, and it's on the National and State Registry of Historic Places. So it's a really significant feature on the site. A couple other things noted there, the images, if you can see them, the cemetery is there, and there's some outbuildings and a corn crib and a stable, a tobacco barn, and there are possible enslaved persons quarters as well. So all these areas combined really paint a nice picture, overall historical picture of a really important aspect of the site. In addition to the historic aspect of just that particular area, we want to talk about the easements. So this kind of leads me into my next point to talk about. If you're looking at the picture, those dashed lines around the center are the easements. And those easements are basically boundaries that protect significant historic property. They're the dashed lines in the pink, and the green, and the orange, and they serve as boundaries to limit development. So we really have to respect those. And all of the Concord Manor outbuildings and the house fall within those easements. So we really have to be careful about how any area in there is developed. Also, if you look north, up on north of Central Avenue, where the Morgan Boulevard Metro station is, that's where the Risley Farm was. There are many different places there too. If I want to highlight just a few, the Ridgely Methodist Episcopal Church and Cemetery. If you're looking at your image, that's number 8 for the church there. There's also the Richard Rosenwald School, number 7, and the tobacco barn there too. And they were very prominent African American landowners and entrepreneurs in the area for many, many years. And it's important to recognize, even though this property is off-site, it's important for the region, historical component of the region. So these two components together kind of go hand in hand in how we're thinking about the history of the site. Next slide, please. All right, in addition to history, we have to talk about natural resources and existing conditions of actually what's on the site, in not regards to structures, but the nature there. So if you see number 2, that's kind of the forest there. It's the largest region of the site, a contiguous forest, the largest contiguous forest inside the Beltway, sure. It's number 2 in the dark green area if you're looking here, and there are 7 different forest cover types within this. I won't point all of them out, but just know that that's a very important feature of the site. There's grasslands along Walker Mill Road, and there's also invasive species present, which you see in picture number 1. And that's also highlighted on the map, showing you exactly where the different portions are. Any of those striped red features are there. There's also wetlands. That's all the blue that runs down, and the blue, long, wide band is floodplain that runs through there. So, significant flooding can happen there in a 100-year flood, and the wetland areas are areas that hold groundwater. So it's important for us to recognize where those are, because development can be limited in those areas as well. Number 3 notes the open spaces that we have. And that open space is right around Concord Manor Plantation as well, too. So you can see that just south of that and also just west of it. And there's also a little bit of open space in the northeast, too, that we're all considering like reasonable places for development. Also, though not pointed out on here, there are 3 champion trees on site. And champion trees are trees that are larger than any others in the county. And there are actually 3 of them on site. So it's really important that this entire region understands like the importance of the nature there, too. Okay, it's important for us to preserve natural resources in the area, and it's important because the conservation effort that we have is focused on protecting species from extinction and maintaining and restoring habitats, and we want to enhance ecosystems and protect biological diversity. So for these reasons, it's really important that the forest structure in these vegetative areas are really honored. Very important. Next slide, please. So now it takes us to our opportunities and constraints. You know, there are, based on all of the research that we've done, analysis, there are various opportunities that we're going to discover. And there is also going to be various things that are going to be limitations to development. The Chesapeake Beach Rail Trail, if you can see that very wide orange band that runs from the northwest and then follows all the way down to the southeast. That is, it's already an established trail from the Chesapeake Beach Railway. It's already on site. It presents a great opportunity for development. And that's going to be talked about a little bit more later on a later slide by my colleague. Those red stars on the map that you see are possible entrances for a new updated entrance for pedestrians. The hatched area in the middle, it's kind of almost like right in the middle bottom of the section, shows potential. That's the National Registry of Historic Places boundary and it's prime farmland. There's also other potential developable areas in the tan color. If you see like the 14.5 acres, that area, and also the ones that you're seeing that are highlighted, also in the northeast up there. These are very, very great potential developable areas because of the already the topography there and how they're open land. Now we look at some constraints there. The constraints could be the topography. Now there's very steep slopes in there. If you can see the dark reddish colors that kind of encompass the entire site, they're intermittently throughout. They're really red and kind of splotchy there. Those are steep slopes of greater than 15%, and that's where it would be definitely limited for development in those areas. Also, one of the constraints can be wetlands. The wetlands, they hold groundwater, so it's very important how you really consider any kind of possible development if it's even able to occur in a wetland. But generally, wetlands are going to be places that we do not develop anything. And of course, the historic easements, which are those boundaries that I talked about before. You can see them in those dashed lines on your screen right now. Those have to be honored in development as well. So anything in between, inside of that boundary is going to have limited development. Next slide, please. All right, we have some major themes and takeaways from this that we just talked about in the analysis. The site and regional history is very important. We want to provide, we want to expand the knowledge of that. There's also, we want to provide spaces for community access and gathering, as you see. We want to expand health and recreational opportunities. We want to continue agricultural use. And we want to expand the appreciation of the site's unique natural resources. And that's really, really important, really prime importance. Next slide, please. All right, and that takes us to poll question number 4. And this question is, which themes are important to you? And this is 4, so when you put your answers in the chat or in your email, please make sure and put a 4 beside those. So 4A is local history, 4B, natural resources, 4C, agricultural uses, 4D, health and recreational opportunities, and 4E, community access and gathering. So please choose 3 of those. These are which themes are important to you. I can read those one more time. 4A, local history, 4B, natural resources, 4C, agricultural uses, 4D, health and recreational opportunities, and 4E, community access and gathering. We'll give you about 30 seconds to go ahead and complete those. Great. Looks like we've got some responses. So now we're going to get into the zones of experience that my colleague is going to be able to talk about. I guess we can go to the probably the next slide, please. Oh, there we go. I would like to introduce Mark Genet, a colleague of mine from LSG Landscape Architecture, and to talk about the zones of experience for everyone.
Thank you, Stacy, and good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us here today and taking out valuable time to help us plan this Walker Mill Regional Park. I recognize, of course, that you could all be out buying snow shovels and salt, and we'll try and wrap up here so that eventually you'll be able to do that like everyone else. But over the next couple days, when we have this bad weather, perhaps you want to make sure that you take a chance to visit the website where, among other things, my colleague Stacy has recorded a series of videos that actually provide a little bit more detail of the information he just gave you there. And then, of course, there's also, as Tom mentioned, the available survey still that we can still contribute to, so we can get your input there. I'm going to spend a little time talking about what we call the zones of experience. And what we've done here is, because the park site is over 500 acres, it's really important to look at it as a series of different spaces that might have different potential uses for the community. And we're going to start, and they're basically grouped by like landscape types. And for example, we've got what we call the conservation areas. And so those of you who can see on the map here, these are the areas to the north, the largest areas to the north and south of Walker Mill Road. They're really all forested right now. For people who are on call-in, kind of think of the site as a donut that sort of straddles Walker Mill Road, and the donut part surrounding a center core is really all wooded forest land, and it includes the floodplains and streams from the Southwest Branch. Then we've got what we call the Southern Athletic Zone, which is the developed portion of the park site south of Walker Mill Road. The Concord House historic property, as Stace described, that's north of Walker Mill Road. And then two areas on either side of it. To the west, an area we believe might be a potential development area, the Western Active Area. The eastern portion, more open lands that might be possible for community agriculture. And then finally, north of, to the far northeast corner, north of Walker Mill Drive, is a small separate piece of land we're calling the eastern northeastern zone. And then finally, of course, we got Walker Mill Road. So we'll walk through each of these, and we'll talk a little bit about what might be potential based on what we've heard from you so far and what our research has shown. Next slide, please. Great. So we'll start by talking briefly about the Southern Conservation Area. And as Stace mentioned, and as I just sort of gave you a summary of, it really is the largest single chunk of contiguous land south of Walker Mill Road. And it really is all mature forest right now, and really straddles the tributary to the Southwest Branch there, the floodplain. Some of the developed facilities include, there's a small playground to the very south, but that's connected with a very nice trail that goes through the woods. And if you're looking at the slide, there's a photograph of that in the lower left, and that crosses up to the north to the developed recreation area. Next slide, please. The Southern Athletic Zone, again, is everyone has mentioned so far, is really the place that you're probably all most familiar with. And if you visited the park site, that's probably where you went. It's got, fantastic ball fields, and it's got the Imagination Playground, and we've got some photographs of that for those who are on phones and aren't that really show the facilities there. But to date, we did have some discussion with folks, and some of the things that came up in our conversations with them is that, it would be nice to add some additional picnic shelters there, for example, to really be more proximate to the fields and so on. And the other thing that's really important that came out is the difficulty in crossing from the north to the south, the traffic on Walker Mill Road, and how we would connect the north and south parts of the site. And in fact, in some of the focus group meetings and elsewhere, we've heard that even a bridge ought to be considered to get pedestrians across if you really want to make this whole park a connected experience. Next slide, please. We're going to go north of Walker Mill Road now, and we're going to talk a little bit about the areas there. So the first is really what we call the conservation zone in the north, and that it's sort of the mirror image of the conservation land on the south. It's got a large tract of contiguous mature forest, as Stacy has described, and also the floodplains. So the things that are really useful, and there are a couple of good photographs here, including that one of those champion trees, which are really quite impressive. And one of the things everybody really wants to do is, as we think about how to use this northern part and how to get people into the landscape so they can kind of experience some of these great things. Next slide, please. So what are the opportunities there? Well, obviously it's where we're going to be preserving. We want to preserve the floodplain. The Chesapeake Beach Rail Trail, as was mentioned before, is really in the northern portion, and it's a component of that site. We really want to try and make the wildlife, protect it and make it accessible, such as the barred owl here and the pileated woodpecker, which are what are considered forest interior dwelling species. They're birds that really like large contiguous tracts of woods, and that's pretty unique inside the Beltway to have something like that. So how would we access that? Well, some kind of multi-use trails that might provide connections, such as the Chesapeake Beach Trail, and then maybe soft surface trails that would not have the same kind of impact on the environment, but still provide a way to get into the landscape to experience it. Next slide, please. So let's talk a little bit about the Chesapeake Beach Trail. This is a pretty interesting, historic site. It's, we've got a great photograph plan here that shows the extent of it and a series of cross sections for those of you who are listening rather than watching this. And what it really shows is the trail. It's sort of a ready-made trail almost, because old railroad rights of way, they tend to be relatively level, and they've all been sort of graded out. Now it's a bit overgrown with trees and so on, but it really could provide an excellent base for a real trail. And the great thing is it would connect really to the northwest. It could connect up to the Central Avenue Trail without, which gets fairly close, within about a block. And then to the south, connecting it back down to Walker Mill Road, and then to the more, urbanized areas just immediately to the east. So we think it could be really a terrific resource over time. Next slide. Yes, thank you. And finally, as Stacy has mentioned, the Concord House and Grounds are just a fantastic resource. They connect, they're in and of themselves, and then the part that they played in the local history as well. But how does one make that accessible to the public? We know that we've got the concern over the Maryland Historic Trust easement over it, and that's going to limit, to some extent, they'll have to approve what gets done there. But fortunately, in the county, there are a number of developed historic resources already, so that the parks is quite good at doing this. So we've got the house, the corn crib, the stables, the tobacco barn, and outbuildings. So we know that interpretive programming, being able to take people on tours, to put signage in and so on is obviously a very important component of how people look at historic sites and really make them popular. But beyond that, we think also that having some kind of an event space associated with this will be an excellent addition and something that we'll want to look at and explore. So next slide, please. So let's talk a little bit about some examples of things. What we're showing here is a series of pictures of what might happen on this site or has happened on similar sites. First is really renovating the house and providing additional interpretation for it. That's actually in process. The house is currently being renovated. Second is maybe provide some kind of an outdoor event space for gatherings or performances. And possibly even doing that in a reimagined way with the tobacco barn. The tobacco barn is this really cool sort of remaining structure that we've seen a number of examples elsewhere where people have done things where they've combined that and really created a more unique experience, allowing people to kind of use something like that. So we're going to explore some of these things, but we want to kind of test these ideas with you. Finally, the Concord lawn that leads up from Walker Mill Road is so prominent in the area and so clearly seen that it's just a great opportunity if you're holding an event that would make it very easy to access. So something else we'll be looking at. Next slide, please. Finally, we've got what we call the Western Zone. And this is an area of about 15 acres to the immediate west of the Concord House and Grounds north of Walker Mill Road. And really the only activity there right now is the community gardens, a very popular but small community garden space. But the remaining lands there are, they're open, they're not forested. They've got a little topography to them, but they are, we believe, with the good access from Walker Mill Road, and they're very proximate across the street to the developed facilities, that it might be an excellent location for any kind of new developed facilities that get put on Walker Mill Regional Park. There's a hedgerow to the east that kind of buffers their view from the historic areas. And so let's take a look on the next slide at a couple of things that we might consider for that space. And some of these are ideas that have been suggested so far by you in the focus groups, on the survey, and some come from Formula 2040 and other really planning efforts. But we want to bring this up to the broader audience here today and let everybody have a say. And so additional because it sort of backs up to the woods to the north, we think creating additional picnic areas and pavilions would be a terrific location for that. Could be because, everybody likes a little shade when they picnic, but they like some access to some open areas, might have a little pickup game of ball or something while you're there. Band shell or amphitheater space for performances was suggested. There's some interesting topography here that we feel that you could actually site probably a band shell, and it might be a nice sloped lawn that leads down to the front so people could watch performances. Public art or botanic gardens, things like that, some sort of display, interesting visual place to walk around and through. We thought that's a nice complementary activity to what's going on at the historic house that's adjacent. And finally, outdoor fitness, could be a good location for a fitness trail or walkways. And finally, because it's a large open and accessible space and near Walker Mill Road, we do know that there is a need for additional park police facility. We've heard that. We also know that as the park develops, there's going to be a need for a bigger maintenance facility. And so, we're testing the locations for those things in various parts of the site. And so these are just some of the things. But what I'd like to do now is go to our poll question number 5, which is on the next slide. And because this is such a significant area of the site, we want to give you the opportunity to help us plan for that. So we've got a few suggestions here. So we're going to do the same kind of poll as Tom and Stace and JJ explained before. How would you rank the importance of the following things in this zone? So we'd like to have you pick your top 2 ideas for what might fit in this 15 acres. Just as a quick aside, how big is 15 acres? Well, a soccer field's about 2 acres, so it's a pretty big space. So 5A, the first one is athletic or aquatic facilities. Okay, it could be an outdoor spray area, aquatics, pool, so on. So 5A is athletics and aquatics. 5B would be a performance space. 5C is a botanic garden. 5D is passive recreation, like picnic areas. 5E is art installation. 5F is park police. And 5G is something else that hasn't been listed. And you might note that if you respond to that as 5G, let us know. So again, what would be the best thing to put? What would you rank in importance for this area? Pick 2 if you want. 5A is athletics or aquatics. 5B is performance space. 5C is a botanic garden. 5D is passive recreation and picnic areas. 5E is art, public art. 5F is park police, and 5G is, up to you. So I want to thank you for giving us this information, because this is really critical as we move forward. Again, we think, as Stace has pointed out, and as an site analysis, this is an important area. And what I'd like to do next is introduce my colleague Amal Deshpande, who's going to wrap up the experience zones and take you through the rest of our presentation here.
Turn your mic on, Amal.
Thank you, Chanda. So thanks a lot, Mark. Good morning, everybody. My name is Amol Deshpande with LSG, and I'm going to talk about a few of the experience zones. But before we do that, I guess I would like to just, we have shared quite a bit of information so far, right? So if there are any questions or comments that you have, please put those into chat and we'll try to address them. And if you keep thinking about any questions you may have, we're going to open up the floor for more of that towards the end. So, but we are happy to answer any burning questions you may have regarding the zones that we have talked about so far. So I'll give about 10 seconds.
Okay, well, we have one question from January. Her question is, why not further develop the current community garden? I know we've had discussions about expanding that, so if you could answer that really quick.
Absolutely. Community garden is an essential component, I think, of any development that happens on the northern side of the Walker Mill Park. And it is a very good, beloved amenity right now in the park. So we recognize that. What we do know that from the south side, if we want to connect with the north, it is best from traffic engineering perspective to have the curb cuts on the north side directly opposite of the curb cuts that are leading to the south side of the Walker Mill Park. So unfortunately, the current community garden is right there, and any kind of development we might do will hamper that. And we do think that there are better locations, or rather equally better locations out there on the north side. So if we do end up moving it, we'll have to definitely make sure that we develop the other facility first before we take out the current facility, so that the residents don't miss out on this great kind of facility that we have here. So I hope that answers the question. All right, let's move on. If you have questions, please put those in the chat. Ayana and Chanda are monitoring it, and we will surely get to you with those answers. So that said, let's go to the next zone. So we're going to talk about the next zone. We call it agricultural zone. This is immediately east of the historic zone that Mark talked about, and this zone is unique in the sense it's easily accessible from the Walker Mill Road. It's got very gentle topography, has great access to all the basic infrastructure like electricity, water, sanitary, and it has some really good soils that are really useful for agriculture and farming activities. So this is also a place where we can continue the agricultural use, but more so for the community perspective. So let's see the next slide, please. Next slide. So on the next slide here, what we see is what are the different opportunities from agricultural or farming perspective, from the community agriculture perspective rather. So right there on the top, we can definitely develop it for community gardens. We can also work in conjunction with agricultural education programs such as 4-H and University of Maryland Extension partnerships to lease some of this area for people who want to learn more about agriculture or experience or experiment on the urban agricultural programs. So during the focus group meeting, people suggested hoop houses, greenhouses, and things of that nature can be explored on this land. And it is it's big enough to incorporate many of these different programs. So let's go to the next slide now. Next slide, please. All right, so we are going to talk about two different areas that are very similar to each other in some respects. The first one is along the Walker Mill Road, and the second one is along the Walker Mill Drive. That's the northernmost area of this park. The similarities are that both of these parcels have very easy access, ready access to the road infrastructure, and then they have a fair bit of area that is leveled, that is not vegetated, and that can be used for a development area. They have areas that are outside the floodplain, so that is also very important. So what can we do in these areas? Let's look at that in the next slide. So we know that these areas have great access to the nature, and so we can definitely provide more of that kind of amenity there, such as picnic shelters, areas for camping facilities, especially the northern portion that we showed you is sort of midway between the Concord Manor House area and the Ridgely Rosenwald School and the other areas along the Central Avenue. So it is an area that can provide that connectivity between our Walker Mill Park and the Central Avenue area. So it's also important from that perspective. The previous master plan efforts had used the area along the Walker Mill Road for Park Police Facility, and that could also happen in any one of these two parcels. Along with Park Police Facility, these areas can also be used for maintenance facilities. One of the things about these two areas is they are fairly away from any kind of historic influence, historic Concord Manor House area. So they can support us in these kinds of different activities, including, for example, dog park. Dog parks are otherwise very difficult to locate in urban areas because they are sometimes perceived as noisy, sometimes perceived as not very well kept. They need bigger areas, they need parking, they need road, everything. So these two areas actually provide all of that. And so perhaps a dog park is also not out of question. So there are many areas, many things that could happen in these two parcels. Next slide, please. And the last zone, experience zone, we're going to talk about is the Walker Mill Road itself. It's the area that connects the north and the south. So it's a very important zone. And from all the focus group meetings, we know that people are very concerned about how do you go from the south to north. The safety is a big concern for the people. But from park design and planning perspective also, we think that this is a really good experience zone. As you can see in the pictures below, these are different pictures along that the entire road. And we typically come in from the Beltway side, so I'm going to talk about it as you're coming from the east side. It's very interesting coming into the park area here. You cross over a bridge, you're surrounded by trees on both sides. It's a very narrow kind of area that you're coming through. And then the area opens up a little bit on the left-hand side with the existing Park Police Facility. And then as you travel further to the west, the areas on both sides of the road open up with the historic agricultural zone on the right-hand side and the great, sports facilities on the left. So, it's really diverse experiences that you get when you're traveling along this road, all the way to the western side as you get into the more suburban residential zone. So it's a very interesting experience that we need to think about. Let's go to the next slide now. And on that road, obviously what could happen? Safety is one of the major concerns. So, speed bumps, maybe the pedestrian crossing signs, maybe even roundabouts. Roundabout at each end of the road would really help to reduce the speeds and also maybe perhaps help to announce that you are in the park zone. That's kind of cool. We know that there are bike lanes already along the Walker Mill Road, and so perhaps that will be great to highlight. Now, crossing from south to north or north to south, the pedestrian crossings, we can use art as another means of highlighting those pedestrian connections to make them more safe, but also make the experience of crossing more enjoyable. There are some examples shown here that are more artistic, and they also, obviously are very safe because they're bright, colorful. And then during the focus group meeting, as Mark mentioned, people are interested in exploring the idea of an overhead bridge between the north and the south. And perhaps there are some examples there on the side, on the slide here, and that would be a great, kind of a neat element that we can plan for. Although obviously we have to think about the cost and everything, so that is something we will be exploring along with the Department of Park and Recreation. So we have this agricultural and historic references on the north side, right? So how about some plantation fencing? It could be typical plantation fencing or some typical stacked stone walls. That would be wonderful. Some neat native tree plantings on both sides of the road. That will be really wonderful. And as I mentioned, this road it's not just about going from point A to point B. You are traveling through a regional park, and it doesn't feel like that right now. We want to make sure it feels like it. And so I think announcing that you are entering a regional park right on the east side as well as on the west side, I think that will be very helpful. So maybe perhaps we can provide some sort of entry features or entry monuments on either end or somewhere along that experience zone. Next slide, please. All right, we are coming to poll number 6. And we asked a similar question previously, but then we gave you a lot more information after asking that question. And now what we want to do is understand what your priorities are. I know everything here is very important to you, but sometimes, it might be very important for you to, the conservation is like really important because, we know all the climate change and everything, but I really need the community gardens to be the focus in the beginning. That's perfectly fine. We just want to understand what you think are the priorities. So your options here, and please choose 3 options, okay? So the options are 6A, historical education and display. So talking about the Concord Manor House and all of that. 6B, conserving natural resources. 6C, event and performance spaces. 6D, agricultural uses and programs. That could mean community gardens, hoop houses, whatever. 6E is health and recreation opportunities. That could mean bike trails, pedestrian trails, all fitness centers, all of that stuff. So please put your opinion in the chat box. And for those of you who are attending over the phone, please send your feedback by email or call JJ. All of that contact information, I think Ayana and Chanda has provided to you in the chat box. We will be again giving it to you at the end of this presentation. So just stick with us, and we want to hear from you. All right, let me see here. Seems like we are getting some responses. Let's give everybody another 10 seconds, 15 seconds here. All right, so let's go to the next slide, please. So we have covered 3 things so far. We talked about experience zones. And now we're going to talk about feedback, summary, and next steps. And for that, I would like to hand it over to JJ. JJ, please take it away.
Thank you, Amol. Well, thank you, Mark, Amol, Tom, Ayana, Stacy, and everyone else on the back end, Claire, Shonda, for getting us to this point. This is where we do the Q&As, but before we do that, I do want to emphasize some of the information that we presented today. I know this was a lot of information, and again, like Mark said, please take the time during the snow days to review these presentations and poll questions, so you can submit them online or email them to me, especially if you have direct questions about the experience zones or the existing conditions. But again, just to emphasize, even though our goal is to plan and develop for the North, we want to make the park cohesive. We want to make sure that we can connect the South to the North safely, using different strategies like a bridge or art on Walker Mill Road, but again, make it safe and make the park usable. And some other things that I do want to emphasize again are the limitations and opportunities. So we constructed these experience zones around what we know we cannot touch fully. So for example, the historic easement around the Concord Manor, that really limits us to what we can develop within it and around it. So some of the examples that we gave during the presentation really kind of came from, were derived from those limitations, but really turned into opportunities. I know there was a question from January about the community garden. We, like Amol said, we understand that that's a large piece of this community. We know that there's a lot of people who want to expand it, so we are definitely not getting rid of it. We're looking for opportunities to broaden it, to make sure that more people can be active in that activity and really use that amenity. So now we will go to Q&A, and I think Ayana will lead us off by reading some of the questions. So if you have any questions, feel free to post them in the chat again.
Thank you, Jay. So one of the, oh, sorry. Thank you. One of the questions that we got in the chat during the meeting was, is there a plan for the historic church? And so we want to clarify that the Department of Parks and Recreation does not own the church, but the goal is to share the collective stories and support the interpretation of the area's history, especially through an African-American lens. So I hope that clears that up, that we don't actually own the church. We are just working to share the stories with them. There was a question about how will the future Royal Farms that is supposed to be coming near Walker Mill Road, how will that impact the plan? I can't believe there's another Royal Farms coming, I will say that. But as we continue to look at Walker Mill, we will consider the nearby uses, and but we don't think it should have a major impact on the plans that we have so far. We touched on the community gardens question. There was a question about whether or not we were planning any lacrosse features. If anyone from the team wants to tap in, just unmute and answer.
Yes, I can take that one.
Sure.
So right now we do have the multi-purpose field, which is artificial turf field that supports lacrosse there currently. We know that there is a need for more fields like that. But as of right now, we are trying to maybe look for opportunities outside this park and really utilize the north side for other activities like the community garden, really emphasizing the history of the park. But we're still keeping that within our process to see if we can fit it anywhere else in the park.
Thank you, JJ. Another question is, do we plan to have park facility management on site?
Yes, absolutely. We know this is a ask from many years ago, specifically in the form of park police. We know that park police is an integral part of this community. And so highlighting park police and having another adjacent community space, like community meeting rooms, maybe attached to the park police building, is an option that we're exploring. But definitely have DPR presence and staff at the park.
Good, great. In addition to that, will we be doing a detailed traffic study near the area of the park?
That is something that will come after this process. We are exploring that a little bit now, but especially with the speeds that cars fly down that road, we know we need to execute on a study like that. But that'll come after. A more detailed study will come after this planning process.
And I don't currently see any more questions in the chat, so I believe this will be our last one. How do we define health and recreation opportunities, and why isn't that combined with the agricultural opportunities? Excuse me.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question?
Sure, no problem. How do we define health and recreation opportunities, and why isn't it combined with agricultural? Why can't those two segments be the same bullet point, I would say?
I can probably take that one, JJ.
Great.
I think for that, what we were thinking, we obviously have a separate agricultural zone and category, but in the health and recreation, we were thinking about a little bit more active recreation, and that is health related. So it could mean outdoor fitness facility. It could also mean aquatic facility. Some in the focus group meeting, people mentioned it, or it could mean other things. Maybe some informal lawn areas that people want to do some Tai Chi or things of that nature. So yes, agricultural sort of doing community gardening is very healthy for you and is part of a good healthy regime. But we are more thinking in terms of actual amenities and facilities that are specifically geared towards it when we ask that question. I hope that helps.
Thank you, Amal. It does. While you were answering that question, we did receive some more questions in the chat. One of them is about the partnership field with the Washington Nationals in context of the park and any possibility for it to be accessible to the public, I guess more than it is currently. If anyone on our team has an answer for that, that would be great.
Yeah, as of right now, that field is permit only just because of the conditions. It's a level 3 field, meaning that it has the whole 9, the lights, the good field, it's irrigated. So we are keeping that for permit use, but we are also looking for other opportunities to open up the other fields for other activities. We know that, just to shout out the kickball leagues, we know that they were a big proponent of this community even before this project. So we are looking for other ways to accommodate those types of activities as well.
Awesome. Councilmember Davis would like to know what the champion trees are and more information about those, if you will.
Sure. I can help here, JJ. Well, a champion tree is basically the largest specimen of its species, and so there are national champion trees, there are state and also county-wide. So we have 3 on this site, and so that just means that they are, well, I think 2 of them are close second, but one of them is certainly right up there, and the Department of Natural Resources, I think, is evaluating if to call it officially a champion tree or not. But yeah, it basically means one of the largest trees of that kind within the county. JJ, you might have a bit more.
No, I think you hit it spot on. It relates to this plan because of the significance, especially, I know I saw another question about walking trails. These are the types of significant pieces that we would love to connect through trails. Not specifically developing near it, but having people really enjoy and understand the nature aspect of the park and the forested areas of the park.
So it looks like we have 2 final questions, and then we're going to wrap up for the morning and let you guys go. JJ answered the question about the walking trails. We have one about, will the cemetery on the grounds of the mansion be preserved?
For sure. So if you all could, Ayana, if you could put it back to the question slide. And you can see the white dotted lines around the Concord Historic Site. That encompasses the manor, the outbuildings, including tobacco barns, the field in the front, but also the cemetery. Again, there are limitations according to the state, what we can and cannot develop within that area, but also requiring us to preserve it, including the cemetery.
Sounds good. Our final question for the morning, which I think is an important one to ask for the community, is will there be specific training or plan for community engagement with the police presence that will be added near the park?
So that'll definitely be down the line when we come back to you guys. So some of the next steps, this leads into the next steps. We'll take all this information, correlate it, and make sure we have it to guide the planning process. And so the park program. So the park program will be developed, is made up of internal policy goals and objectives, what the site can feasibly support, and what the community, what you all desire. And so when that comes about, we'll come back to you, which will include the piece about the park police, and we'll start making those interactions and share those ideas with how we can place them in the park.
Awesome, sounds great. Thank you, JJ. I also want to thank our director, Bill Tyler, for joining us this morning, Councilmember Derek Davis, who's always a joy to have. I want to thank the team from the Department of Parks and Recreation who has been here with us this morning on the back end, answering questions in the chat. Also LSG and Greenplay, and everyone from Derek Davis's office as well. On behalf of the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission, Department of Parks and Recreation in Prince George's County, I want to thank all of you again for spending this Saturday morning with us. For more information on the Walker Mill Regional Park Master Development Plan and other parks and recreation updates throughout Prince George's County, please follow us on social media, which was dropped into the chat, and visit the project page at pgparks.com/WMRP Master Plan. On that page, you can also find JJ's contact information, a link to the poll, to the survey that is currently on, and the presentation that we have went through this morning. Thank you again, and enjoy your day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.